All right, everyone, welcome back to the Synthesis Workshop podcast. Very excited today because we have Team Heptanes joining in on the podcast today. There's a question that is this obsession with heptanes. Well, first of all, I'm joined by Scott Bagley, an associate research scientist at Pfizer. So we have a lot to talk about today. It's going to be a lot of laughs, a lot of good vibes and good times, a lot of good chemistry and things to consider, some advice, research advice, career advice, all the above, past experiences. We're going to talk about it all today. It's going to be a lot of fun. Scott, thank you for taking the time to do this.
Oh, it's
Really look
fantastic.
forward to
Thanks
it.
for the invite. It's been it's been a pleasure watching some of your podcasts with people that I respect and know from the outside and learning about everybody else. And so it's awesome to be able to give it back and share some of my things and talk about heptanes, of course.
Yeah, so it's kind of a running gag, I guess at this point on Twitter. I'm kind of unfamiliar with it. I mean, is it the go-to recrystallization solvent? Where did this obsession come from?
So, years ago, we used to use hexanes all the time, for columns, ethyl acetate hexanes.
Mm-hmm.
And it became, I think we switched for a few reasons. One was the hexanes is actually kind of is a VOC, a VOC, a volatile organic compound, kind of it's somewhat regulated in that way. We switched to heptanes for that, but also because hexanes actually is really interesting. The metabolism in your body is mainly focused on oxidizing carbons and other things that can be oxidized, so that your body can get rid of them. Your enzymes will oxidize not the terminal, but the second one, the second carbon in, or the first carbon in. So you'll end up with, if you oxidize hexanes, you'll end up with this gamma diketone, which is really set up to do a perfect Poisson-Nord condensation on the N-terminal of your purity, of your of proteins in your body. And so it can actually it can be toxic in higher doses. And so switching to heptanes is actually really is a great idea, and it is way more expensive, yes, but it is in the long run safer for that reason. That was one of the first reasons we switched. I actually started really liking it because as soon as we switched, you saw the difference in the compounds we were making. And so the reason is the boiling point of hexanes is less than ethyl acetate. The boiling point of heptanes is higher. So when you throw your column fractions on the rotovap, if you're using hexanes, your compound is kind of left as like almost an oil or a sticky solid with ethyl acetate. With heptanes, ethyl acetate comes off first, and most of the time you end up with nice solids.
Wow. Okay.
And so, that's a great thing. Then we started using heptanes in crystallizations, and I've had just so much success crystallizing things with, mixtures of heptanes or even heptanes itself, that it's become one of my go-tos for that. And as you learn more and more about it, some of the really kind of interesting properties show up, like heptanes can azeotrope DMF. So if you've done a reaction,
that's very convenient.
So that's excellent to know for working up reactions and things like that. And then it's also really interesting because you can do an organic extraction. Now heptanes isn't the only one that does this, but you can do heptanes and acetonitrile extraction. So if you've got something with like a lot of like silanes or something like that, you can actually pull that into heptanes and leave your compound in the acetonitrile layer.
Yeah.
There's just so many cool things about heptanes. And when you go to a meeting or something and you see talks about people especially like process chemists crystallizing their stuff at the end of a long route, and it's either in water or heptanes. And so it just became a thing, and just it's my favorite. I don't think I've ever run a reaction in heptanes.
Yeah,
but
sure.
it's just such a great solvent for so many end game reasons.
Yeah. Well, that first point you made about the safety of it, the toxicity point of view, I initially had never really considered. We actually in our lab, we do have like a liter of heptanes around in case for whatever reason you need the that recrystallization is not really going too well, just give a shot into heptanes. And for the reasons you mentioned, yeah, those ethyl acetate heptanes extractions, very, very useful.
Absolutely.
So
I would like to, if your stuff's not too polar, I like to throw a little heptanes in, like I said, in the ethyl acetate when you're doing an extraction. Just kind of helps push a little bit more of the water out,
Yeah,
So.
So first I'm learning about that.
A convert.
I've now been converted to Team Heptanes. So join us on the light side.
There you go.
We're going to convert some more people from hexanes to heptanes. We were chatting a little bit before this podcast started. We were chatting about your hot sauce collection. So I would definitely want to talk about this a little bit because I guess you really like hot sauce, but also Tabasco sauce. I'm not a huge fan.
That's all right. No,
if it's sitting around, but if it's there, if it's available, I will definitely have some Tabasco hot sauce. But for you, you're telling me you used to sell hot sauce or make your own, or please tell us a little about that.
Yeah, I've been a hot sauce fan for years. We grow peppers at home. Habaneros are my favorite. I tell you the truth, and interesting. We actually have every year bags of them. We freeze in the freezer. They use them all winter long, and they freeze really well, and they could go so good and everything. I love that sort of fruity heat of the habaneros. But Tabasco just has that kind of classic, on eggs or on fries or things like that. Tried a lot of other ones. Actually, I did this on purpose. So my all-time favorite is this iguana hot sauce, and now it's backwards.
Look at
it's
that.
a habanero hot sauce. It's not that hot, but it is so flavorful. It's really good. I can only get it either in Florida or through Amazon. But yeah, I've got behind the monitor here on my shelf, I've got about 20 different bottles of hot sauces that I've used here at work, and yeah. So I was trying to use up some habaneros one time and found a couple hot sauce recipes online and kind of modified it to my own tastes, and came up with this recipe that uses that's actually carrot based.
Oh wow! Okay.
And so it's carrots and onions and garlic and vinegar and a bunch of habaneros, and it's weird. It's kind of orange, but it's really tasty and has this really unique flavor and sweetness. And actually, we've been talking about making some more at home this fall. Coming up this fall. And yeah, one of my buddies here, he runs a business out of his farm, and sells all these syrups and things like that, and all kinds of other things, barbecue sauces, et cetera, et cetera. I would trade him some of my sauces, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come sell it?" So I made some, started selling that with him at the Garlic Festival in Mystic, Connecticut. It was a lot of fun for a few years. Got into making other things like pepper jelly. I love the habanero jelly.
Oh, I've had that. That is really good.
We made some habanero orange marmalade.
Okay.
Which is just like amazing on toast and stuff like that. And then one of my favorites is I love like caramel sauce.
Okay.
I think caramel is one of my favorite things, and we made some habanero caramel. It's like this amazing sweet heat. It just, you put it on something like popcorn, and it's got you've got this sweet, salty, crunchy. Oh my gosh, you just can't stop eating it. It's great on ice cream, and yeah, it's just it's fun because it's also like chemistry. Cooking is chemistry.
Yeah.
You can use the cream to make the caramel. You can use that to extract the capsaicin out of the peppers and into the into the recipe.
Yeah. That's awesome that you're able to do that. I feel like a lot of chemists has their own like chemistry based, not chemistry type hobby. So like this is kind of, I mean, like peppers for you. When I'm like kind of out of grad school and have a full-time job, I certainly want to get into, I don't know how to get into it, but making stouts and like kind of becoming stouts, because I love a good stout beer. I'm from the Northeast.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, if you've never been to the Northeast or somewhere cold and had a stout like at the same time, like there's nothing that beats that feeling. So yeah, I feel like every chemist has that chemistry, not chemistry thing that they like to do. I'm trying to find. I was like looking online because I don't really know how the Scoville heat units work.
Yep.
And I was curious about where habanero falls on.
Oh,
Apparently it falls on like in the middle. Like it's a hot or no habanero. It falls somewhere between 100,000 and 300,000 Scoville units. So I
yep.
don't really know what that means, but apparently it's a medium heat.
So, I mean, if you think jalapenos are hot, then a habanero is not a medium.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you consider that some of the crazy ones like the Reapers and things like that are, millions of Scoville units, it's not hot compared to them. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend most people just up and taking a bite of one off the plant. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Genuine question though. So then, do you know where where does the heat actually come from? Like, what is happening to give the heat? Like,
Well, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I know where it is. It's in the inside of people say it's on the seeds, but it's the coating on the inside of the pepper,
okay,
the sort of whitish skin inside the pepper, and that surrounds the seeds as well.
Mhm.
But it's
Okay.
I mean, it's got to be an evolutionary thing for for keep animals from eating the pods, or
Yeah.
something. But I don't know. I'm not really sure how it evolved, but
Yeah.
I'm glad it did.
Yeah. Right. Hot sauce is fantastic. I throw it on everything.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, so that's really cool that you got it. How I don't know, maybe you said this. How did you get into it then initially? Like, I mean, it's like one day you just decided to start doing it.
It's funny. Most of my family is not. We're from Massachusetts. My family is not a spice family. My
Sure.
parents, pepper was hot, and
Black pepper was
black
hot.
pepper, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just remember that. I think the first time I ever had a buffalo wing, I was hooked.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's just been from since then. And once you finally have a place, and a friend of mine here, actually Pfizer, was brought me some habaneros, and I was like, okay, now we're talking. And so next thing you know, started planting them, and yeah, it was
So when I go home, some of my favorite things to buy are those the pepper jelly. I throw them on some toast. I mean, the pepper jelly. If you never had pepper jelly, honestly, just go to the store, get yourself some pepper jelly. It's so good.
Yep.
I don't remember. I remember it being a little bit expensive, but like honestly, it's a nice treat every once in a while. But if you have some extra cash to spend, like just trust, it's good.
I'm a big fan of actually pepper jelly on peanut butter sandwiches.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I like peanut butter, banana, and pepper jelly sandwiches.
There you go. I'm gonna have to give that a try.
Yeah. Just actually sometimes I put it on the side of a plate when I'm having a grilled cheese. Just dip it in there. That's tasty.
So yeah, it's give a pepper jelly a shot here. So just kind of now we got some of your hobbies. Great Boston guy, Stanley Cup. But what I want to discuss with you a little bit here is kind of how your career journey, honestly, because you've involved in so much stuff. We'll certainly talk about the ACS 2024 and future events going on, but perhaps let's start with how you got to this point, because I think what's really, I guess, what a lot of people can connect with and is the fact that you actually don't have a PhD, but rather just years of research and work experience, which I think is for a lot of people quite nice, because they want to go into a career and they don't want to have to go through graduate school, and nor should they feel the pressure to need to. So perhaps we could also talk about the differences between having the graduate degree and like only having the undergraduate degree. So, but before we get into all that, you did your undergraduate in Colorado, I think, right?
No, I was at Bucknell University in Pennsylvania.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. Okay, in Bucknell, good old Northern PA.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit about maybe early interest into chemistry, right?
Sure.
So I don't know if you were a chemistry undergrad or anything like that.
Yep.
You better experience
Yeah,
out,
no,
please.
no problem. Uh, to tell you the truth, it starts back in high school.
Mm.
I was thinking about maybe doing pre-med, and it's funny, I hear this a lot with chemistry majors. People think they want to do pre-med or something, or biology, and so I was kind of in that space when I was maybe a sophomore in high school taking biology, and I just remember one time we were studying something about lipids and proteins and sort of big, you know, molecules in biology, and I just remember looking at something going and seeing a structure. I think pretty sure it was a lipid, and I was like, that's chemistry.
Mm.
And it just this light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what I need to do. I don't want to do biology. I don't want to do pre-med. I want to study chemistry. The next year I took chemistry and had a great teacher and just was off to the races. I will also say that I was kind of primed to be a chemist in my life.
Mm.
My mom was a chemist. She got her bachelor's in chemistry back in the early 60s and was studying for master's before she started having all of us. And actually, when I was in high school,
Wow.
she started teaching she took over for a biology teacher who was out on maternity leave. And so she was my personal ATM at high school, in high school. Yeah, Ma, can I get
Mom, I
20
need lunch
bucks?
money. Okay.
Yeah, and
Need lunch money.
but the next year, so she got that experience of on her resume of teaching, and then started up the next year, my senior year of high school. She started teaching at a neighboring high school chemistry, and she did that for 25 years.
Wow.
And fun fact, my mom was probably, I think she was the first speaker at an ACS conference that I saw. So
Wow.
mom was invited to speak at the ACS somewhere in the early 90s in DC, and I was going, and I sat in the back with my dad and had to explain everything she was talking about. And that actually, that meeting was really instrumental to my later enjoyment of going to the ACS. But it was kind of weird when mom and dad showed up at my poster session when my boss was there. We were given a poster together, and it's kind of like having your parents at the prom. It was kind of it was a good time. But no, she always had science in the house. She never pushed me to be a chemist, but
Right.
I kind of always it was always there. And so then I got to college and I was studying. I had actually some background in organic chemistry from high school, which is kind of weird. I just really enjoyed it, but the little units that we did, and just kind of, we had a very small class of chemists at Bucknell. It was about 12 of us, and I was one of there was like two of us that were very, very interested in organic chemistry, and so just kind of focused on that. I did some summer research, learned learned a few
Licensing though.
things about running in the lab. But this was mid to late 80s, so things were very, very different than they are now. I'll get to that in a sec. But
Yeah.
the second really influential thing was there was a Merck Bucknell lecture series,
Hmm.
and scientists from Merck, and I wish I knew who it was, came and talked one time about drugs, about medicines, and the synthesis of these compounds. And I realized, I was like, wow, this is what I'm studying. This is how I could use it to make medicines.
Right.
And that was the next light bulb. It just was like, oh my gosh, this is what I have to do. I just found what I wanted to do. And Bucknell really didn't have a big connection with grad schools, or so. We had a few master's students and things like that, but there wasn't anybody really saying you should go to grad school.
Right.
Honestly, I wasn't the best student. I studied what I wanted to study, but and so going back for more school wasn't really high on my list.
Sure.
But I'd seen what the farm industry was, and I said that's what I wanted to do. And so when Merck came around to interview, I was more than lucky enough to get a job there. So I was there for a few years. I remember some of the things I remember was my first first week, I walked into one of the labs. I'm like, "What's that?" The guy looked at me like, "It's a flash column." I literally had
Is
never
that
seen it.
Merck? That's a
I mean, that
Merck?
wasn't part of
Funny.
our curriculum at the time, and we
Yeah.
didn't, that's how green I was at the time. And just luckily, I had two guys that were on my hallway that were TAs of mine at Bucknell. And so
Okay,
they
that's
really
very
took
nice.
me under their wing. And that's the third thing that I think is just so important to your entire career
Yeah.
is getting somebody to help you, to guide you, taking under their wing and show you how to do things.
hmm
I think it's so important to find those people that will support you and teach you. And without them, I probably wouldn't be here still doing this now, because they were
Right.
just it was just incredible to have them showing me all the ropes and all the tricks.
hmm
And kind of trying to do that now in reverse and pay to to the younger people that are here and that I meet through the ACS. Another funny thing was just going back to how long ago this was. I had run a couple Stilly reactions
Stilly.
at
Good
Merck,
reactions.
and one time somebody showed me a Suzuki reaction, which at the time was just starting to come into regular use.
hmm
And I honestly thought it was a typo. I mean, what is a B doing there? Shouldn't that be? Did you mistakenly draw a carboxylate? I was like, what is this B? And it was just really kind of wild. One of these kind of moments of just opening your eyes to different ways of making things, and the range of chemistry that's happened since then. I mean, radicals. I mean, back then we did NBS brominations, and
Oh,
that was the only
type of radical chemistry.
radical reaction we ever did. And now it's just like, well, if you're not doing radicals, are you even doing chemistry?
Right.
So
It's the new hot thing right now.
I'm gonna have to stop for just half a second, plug in
Yeah.
my my headphones. I thought I had charged them, but
Oh, good. Yeah, take your time.
yeah,
All good.
just a sec. Hopefully that doesn't kick us off. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, we're good.
Okay,
Yeah, we're
cool.
good.
Yep.
One thing about that then is, so you were actually there for the transition from, I guess, the Stilly to the Suzuki Miura
Mm-hmm.
coupling. That's
Yep.
pretty interesting. What was, just for my own curiosity, because we're still working on palladium coupling
Mm-hmm.
reactions 40 years later.
Yep.
It's still so useful. What was maybe the conversation around that time like, as maybe from the pharmaceutical chemist side? Like, was kind of like, yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, is this really a B or really a boron reagent, or is,
Yeah.
so what was kind of the talk? Because I guess one other thing I'll say is, generally speaking, tin reagents are organo tin reagents can be very toxic.
Mm-hmm.
At least for most part. Aryl tin reagents are kind of solids. They're not too bad to work with. But as you move to like alkyl tins, those can be liquids and quite volatile. So just something to keep in mind. But so I guess, yeah, switching from tin to boron was a huge advancement, really. So
Oh, absolutely. And so at the time I was working on what's A2 antagonists, which are blood pressure, cardiovascular drugs. A bunch of them on the market, and the main feature was a biphenyl tetrazole
yeah,
of a lot of these compounds. And so having a really, most of the ones that we at the time, if we couldn't make it if we couldn't buy it, so we were buying simple biphenyls.
mm-hmm.
And I may be misremembering. I mean, seriously, it was just a couple of years ago. But when we started using the Suzuki, it really opened up the breadth of compounds that were available to us to do SAR. I mean, at this time, this was before parallel chemistry,
Right.
and so, but it made all of our handcrafted analogs a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of what are we going to make, how are we going to get these pieces, how are we going to put them together, instead of
Yeah.
trying to functionalize purchased materials. We could just purchase the aryl bromides, the aryl boronic acids,
Mm-hmm.
and start putting these things together. But Yeah, the tin was always an issue. I know not just from a toxicity issue in the lab, but it was also, you know, and it still is today. If you use tin, you have to really be careful around your biological assays as
Yeah.
well. So
Mm.
that was always a concern. But we made it work and had a great time. Learned a lot of chemistry there, but yeah, no offense to Merck was a great company and still is. I just wasn't. Um, Jersey wasn't for me,
What?
and
The promised
I know.
land.
Yeah, no, I had a really great time in New Jersey, but I learned about Pfizer, and it's a lot closer to where I grew up. I'm a Boston kid,
Yeah,
and
of course.
we're here right down the street from Mystic, Connecticut. It's a beautiful area, and it's I'm really, over the years, things have really worked out, and I'm glad I'm here.
Hmm.
It's a really nice place to be, and do some really excellent science.
A couple things I actually wanted to discuss with and kind of echo back on is one, you mentioned, having those, at least those initial, you're down the hall of those TAs or having like that someone under your wing. I feel like that I don't know, people that you've talked to, but how incredibly important this is to remind kind of graduate students and even just young, I would say just broadly speaking, young chemists in general, because there's this feeling that you have to know everything. And like, I don't know where this stigma came from. I don't know why. It's just, maybe it's just in our nature because we're already like, we're already, think highly of ourselves, right?
Hmm.
I just feel like generally as a chemist, right? At least that's my opinion. So it's like this feeling that you have to know everything. I don't know. So it's just, I guess, a reminder that if you are a broadly, young chemist, you don't have to have all the answers, and seeking help is more than okay. It's actually strongly encouraged. So I don't know.
Absolutely. You think about just the process of making a drug. Nobody ever does it on their own, and so pharma is incredibly team oriented, and um, different companies, do it different ways. But my philosophy has always been, you know, you're surrounded. A place like Pfizer or Merck or Amgen or any of these other companies, you're surrounded by world experts in in any chemistry you could imagine, or even like things about how to crystallize things, or how to develop a process, how to do the biology, how to whatever question you have. There are people all around you who are willing to help you understand, because if you're better at your job, then they can be better at their job.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? We can all, because we're all in it together. And I feel like that has been probably my 100% guiding philosophy the whole time, was because of the experience I had with those folks that really helped me. I've sought out help and I've given help, wherever I can. I mean, if you can just develop a rapport with the people around you, they say, a day in the library is better than a week in a lab, right? Well, I feel
Right.
like
That is true.
an hour down the hallway is better than all of that,
Hmm.
because you don't, in the library, you don't even know if you're reading the right thing.
Right.
But if you go and if you know what the people around you are doing, and you can go and say, listen, I'm trying to do this. I have a friend over here. His name's Rob Singer, just fantastic process chemist. He was in the Buckwald group, and he invented BagPhos
Ah,
ligand, and he's just a world expert on all things coupling, and
yep.
especially copper. And so when I want to do some CX couplings, you know, if I don't
Copper's
know
great for
already,
that.
I'll just say, hey, what do you think of this? And we actually used to have a discussion group where we get together, and a whole bunch of us, and just throw stuff up on the wall and say, hey, I'm trying to do this. What do y'all think? And it's such an amazing learning experience, because then they'll come around and they'll talk to you about what you're doing, and what they're doing, and um,
It's a great
that's the
community.
way to get forward.
Right.
And somebody like somebody like me who's had a lot of experience in the industry, knows a lot of people, you know, the young people can come to me and say, do you know how to do this? I said, I don't, but I know this person.
Mhm.
And so I can, being that sort of node to what's going on around helps them forge those connections. So now, that we one of the new hires down the hall, she can go and talk to, I've introduced her to some of the folks that are experts in these different things, photochem, biocat, whatever it
Right.
is, and she's made those connections now, and she can go and have those conversations.
Right.
And so I feel that's the biggest thing, best thing that any of us can be, is to be there to help each other. And
Right.
you know, I feel like in school, maybe you're sort of expected to know this stuff yourself. You're kind of, this is my project.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? If you don't want to be going out asking people to help because maybe it won't be your project anymore,
Right.
maybe that's different. I don't know, but here it's just uh, this
It's
is
very
this is
communicative,
how yeah, this
collaborative.
is how I've
Yeah.
I've learned to work, and hopefully others have, and not everybody is like that, but it's worked for
Mhm.
me. So
Yeah, and it's if it's worked for you, and these are experiences you have, that's your experience, right?
yeah.
Academia is its own microcosm of like weird things. I don't even know how to explain it, but what I can say is that if you are a student, if you're a young chemist, in the marketplace, and if your thought is, if I ask for a question, I'll be, that's like a negative thing, right? Then in general, is that someone you want to be working for or working with, right? Like if that's the mindset, right? I mean, if for the, of course there are some points that you need to be the one you should know these things. Of course, there's always that transition, but for the
Mm,
most part, you know, if you're genuinely curious and you're not sure how to do something, and your first thought is, if I ask this question, I'll be looked down upon, then why are you working with that person? Why are you in this atmosphere? We should not be cultivating that type of thinking, right? You shouldn't be afraid to ask those types of questions. So just something to keep in mind, I think,
mm,
wherever you are, whether you're in academia, whether you're in research, like if it's really so looked down upon to ask questions, then just consider, like, that shouldn't be the mindset in the first place, I would argue. So just something to keep in mind, I guess. Um, but yeah, because should be collaborative. We should be striving for the best, right? Why wouldn't we want that? So I
yeah.
guess just
I
keep that
mean,
in mind.
you're there to learn chemistry. You're there to learn how to do research. And if you're not taking advantage of I don't mean taking advantage, but using the resources you have,
Right,
effectively, then are you coming out of it as the best uh, that you can be? And
right.
to tell you the truth, it it kind of has an effect on hiring as well.
Hmm.
Because I don't want to speak for because every case is different, but
Sure.
we'd like to see people who are really excited about science, about learning, about doing good teamwork.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's a skill that is really important to, and I've had that conversation with other pharma people as well. Is it just, teamwork is a very important skill because that's what we do here. And so,
Right.
so
Like, are
it's
you someone that people want to work with? And if you're not, then you really should reconsider how you carry yourself. I think, it's just, I think it's just also just a good way to be, um, just in general. So
absolutely.
yeah. So moving then to what I kind of want to discuss with you then is maybe this idea of not going to graduate school and getting that research experience. Maybe because people that you've talked to in your own personal experience, right? I mean, you have over 30 years of chemistry, really chemistry research and experience, and that's paid dividends for you because you've also been involved. But it's another discussion. But perhaps maybe for a moment we could discuss maybe the pros and cons of going to graduate school, getting that degree, getting jobs afterwards, versus just going right out of undergrad. Because you can also you can speak for yourself, but also maybe people that you've talked to, like what's kind of been the pros and cons that you've seen over the last 30 years or so. That difference.
Sure, sure. I mean, just there's been a big change in the industry overall. First off, way back when a non-PhD, it was kind of like being at the kids' table at Thanksgiving. It's the best analogy I've ever found to describe this. Is you were there to be in the lab, to be seen, not heard. You were told what to do. If you had ideas, you kind of had to run it by somebody first, or they might take your ideas and propose them to, you were sort of a surrogate, in that
Sure.
way, and it took a lot of time to sort of build that ability to be sort of a real sort of speaking member of the team.
Right.
That has 100% changed. It is not like that anymore.
Really?
People
Okay.
are, when you come in, you're not expected to be, right off the bat, to be somebody who's going to speak up and talk about, things that we should do and shouldn't do. But your voice is there. It's always going to be there. You
Okay.
can, people will listen to you from the very beginning. If you need help, you'll need help. If once you start having, ideas, you are listened to. And I think that's an amazing change. There are some other things. I mean, if you go in as a BS chemist to a pharma job, you'll make money right off the bat. Whereas if you go to school, you're really not. For 5-6 years of your PhD and a couple of years of your postdoc, that's your starting wage is generally about half of a starting PhD, somewhere in that neighborhood, maybe a little bit more than that. But you have 6-7 years of earning you've had before you would have started at the other job.
Mm-hmm.
So that's helpful. You're learning along the way as this whole time. You're learning how to do chemistry in the lab in the context of the projects that you're working. You're making the connections inside with the process chemist, the biologist, and things like that, where a new PhD will not have that when they show up. So you're 6 years ahead in that space.
The networking, I guess.
The networking is very important. That being said, and this is me speaking, as a non-PhD, as a PhD, you are hired and given tasks, promoted, etc. Generally on your, it's assumed you can do this job. A BS MS chemist will generally have to prove they can do it first before they are given that opportunity. It's a slight, but it really becomes a big distinction later on in your career, where there's there's just that at some point it kind of evens out. When you're higher up the ladder, it doesn't really matter. But in sort of that middle range, when you're sort of competing is not the right word I want to say, but when you're sort of at that similar level of an incoming PhD, there's an assumption that PhD will do this job, whereas you have to prove you have to do it before you get it. And I think that can slow down your career progression. It will not stop it, but there's an amount of patience that one has to have in that space, because it's it can be frustrating, but it can be really rewarding, because time when somebody said when you really start making those contributions and people see you for what you can be, and you sort of move beyond that. Oh, they don't have a PhD. You learn you've moved into that. This person is a contributor,
right?
And so that's really rewarding, but it's just it does take time. I have my lab partner here. That she's not one for that. She likes to come in the lab. She does her work. She does it really well. She's an excellent experimentalist. She's done, she's somebody who she'll see something that other people will ignore and then follow up on it, and has, turned reactions around just by being an excellent observer. but she has no interest in climbing the ladder. She just wants to come in and do the job and goes home and takes care of her horses. That's the way she wants to live her life, and being a BS in industry allows her to do that. And and there's a number of folks here who are like that. And to be honest, we need people that's what they want to do.
Right.
And that's great. And she loves her job, and she's not that far from retirement, so I'm gonna miss her when she goes.
Yeah. I think what you said is really well stated. I think something to remember too is like in anyone's ideal job, with let's say keeping it within the context of being a research scientist at a pharma company, right? It's like if there is a desirable job, well then it's inherently going to be competitive to get that job just by its own merits, right? Not even like anything to do with the applicants, right? And I don't know how you feel about this, but this is like a reflection of, I guess, American society and capital in general, right? Not even just in chemistry, where as society's going on, become more advanced, companies are going to want to hire people that already have this innate ability to do. So like, at one, this is what my grandparents say, but it's like, at one point in time, you didn't even need a college degree to get jobs. Then you needed then you needed the college, then you needed a master's, then you needed the PhD. So it's like this kind of advancement and this mindset that's been passed on a generation, right? I'm in a generation where my parents wanted me to go to school, but they were in a generation where they just had to finish. Their mindset was to finish high school, or finish college, right? So it's just kind of this progression. I feel like, I don't know if this is for better or for worse. I'm just simply saying what I've noticed and seen. So I don't know how you think about that, because I think this is kind of it seems like a problem across all disciplines, not even just in chemistry. But I don't know how you feel about what I just said. But
I mean, there are people who came here years ago without a college degree and have actually succeeded for years. They had a program when I first got here. They had a program where so across the street there was factories where they would do all kinds of production here for Pfizer. And once those plants, they started moving some of that production elsewhere, some of those people were brought over here and trained to be chemists. And some of them have gone on to do amazing things, with literally no formal education in chemistry. They came over here, they got showed how to work in the lab, and again, they learned it at the bench. They saw, they learned the techniques. They didn't learn, a mechanism of a Curtius or anything like that. And then they knew how to put things together. Like I like to talk about being a carpenter. I've got a toolkit of reactions. I know whether putting these things together will need a Phillips head or or whatever. And just they've gone on to do really good things. Now, to your comment, I think of it in a way of mindset that people think they need a postdoc to get a job, because it is competitive. So, I mean, you really don't. We hire about half and half PhDs and postdocs. It all depends on what you've done in that PhD or in both. If you've done a single methodology, for instance, for your entire PhD, we'd probably be looking for somebody with a little bit broader experience. But if you had a little bit of different things during that time, and I'm not saying that's the only thing we're looking for, but like I said, is all the other things but it's you want to have a range of experiences because you're going to get a range here, and but I guess it does. There is sort of that always increasing level of, there aren't as many jobs anymore. There aren't as many pharma companies.
Yeah.
There used to be 20 some odd enormous, what they consider large pharma back in the 90s, early 90s, and it's not very many anymore.
Yeah.
So the number of jobs is a lot less as well. So people can be picky.
Yeah.
But interesting, I want to mention this. So the factories that were next door, there were these long, skinny buildings that they used to do fermentation in. And they would do citric acid, penicillin, and all kinds of other things that they would ferment in these factories. These long, maybe 300-foot long, very narrow buildings. And it wasn't right away, but I learned that those buildings were actually, they would build submarines in World War II.
Oh, what the?
Yeah. So right next door to Pfizer here, across the street, and just up the river right outside. There's a river right outside here. Right next door, just up the river, is the company called Electric Boat, where they build submarines.
That's awesome.
And so this whole stretch of land here was where they built submarines in World War II. And after the war, Pfizer bought the land and just repurposed the factories. And so actually just up the river even further is a submarine base where like the subs from like Hunt for Red October, that kind of subs, they're here. And so
That's freaking so cool.
few times a week we'll see subs going up and down the river. It's
submarines.
Real submarines, yeah.
How big are they? Like, are they fit like a 12-man crew?
They're a few 100 feet long. I mean, they're enormous. I actually got a chance to see one up close. When they christen a ship with a bottle of champagne, right? And then it slides into the river.
Yeah.
I saw that with a submarine once. It was the most amazing thing.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So it's kind of a lot of stuff going on around here. It's pretty neat. So in fact, we had some students come here. If we want to segue into safety, so we had a safety tour with some students who were trying from UConn and Yale here, who were trying to sort of bring a safety culture to their grad schools, and they wanted to see what Pfizer was doing in terms of safety and things like that. So we organized a tour in the labs and some reaction safety demos and some other things like that. And the groups, two of the groups got to see a sub going by. The other two
That's really cool.
Because of the nature of the tour, the other two were on the other side of the building, couldn't see the river at the time. But so it was a
little incentive to get up there.
Pretty neat about that. But
yeah,
so
it's definitely segue into some safety considerations, right?
Sure.
This is kind of something we were talking a little bit beforehand, and you see a lot of papers get published, and sure, like on paper they're really cool, like synthetically cool transformation, but it's like there's no comments about the safety considerations. It happens all the time. So perhaps maybe I don't want to say favorites, but maybe a few that stick out to you, like over the years of like just safety considerations, and even like nowadays, like what are maybe some things that come to mind, at least in the present.
So I'll relate to you a couple of conversations. One of my collaborators is Professor Yoon at the University of Wisconsin.
Yep.
And I was talking about reaction safety with him and some of the students one time I was there visiting. And I mentioned high energy intermediates.
Okay.
And what I'm talking about are things like nitroanilins or other azides, organic azides, and other things that have a lot of potential energy stored in them. Like if you run this is actually Jeff Sperry, SafeChem79 on Twitter. He was actually the process safety director upstairs for me, just so right above me for years here. And so he and I got to be good friends. I learned a lot about process safety from them. And so if you run a digital scanning calorimetry test on TNT, it will come back as it's about 4,400 joules per gram. When of like you heat it, you put it in a little bomb literally and heat it up, and then measure the pressure wave that comes off when it just literally goes off. That's a simple way to describe it basically. And at about whatever the temperature is, 200 some odd degrees, you get this enormous spike of energy, and it comes out to be about 4,400 joules per gram. And so we've had some stuff that we make a lot of heterocycles. We do a lot of nitrogen compounds and things like that. And some of them, have had them that were on the order of 2,000, 1,900, 1,500 joules per gram, which, you're talking about half to a third of the energy density of TNT, which is, let's not heat that up, please.
Yes.
And so, learning about that kind of stuff. So I'm talking to Teshik and his students about this, and their thought, basically from the reaction, the chemistry they're doing, so we're talking about high energy intermediates, they're thinking about maybe the triplet state of a, like, that's not, I mean, I know what you're saying, but that's not what I mean. It's just a different way of thinking about bulk properties of compounds.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So when you have
think about transition states and stuff like that.
That's I totally get that. That's a high energy, it was actually a really eye-opening conversation for me, because I would like, okay, let's talk about the rest of these other things.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you mix DCM and sodium azide?
I actually don't know the answer to that.
Okay, so there's actually a paper, and I can
we'll
post
link it
to my I put it out. I kind of have an annual reminder on my Twitter page. There's a paper that went out where there was some DCM residue in a process tank, or I don't exactly remember the thing, but basically there was an azide mixed with DCM, and they ended up with diazidomethane, which is like incredibly shock sensitive, and the thing blew up. And so you don't ever want to mix things like DCM or DCE with azides, because you will get these organic azides, and they are incredibly hazardous. So don't do that.
Keep that in mind.
I mean, there's a lot of things here like that we've talked about over the years. Hear us harping a lot about sodium hydride and DMF or DMSO. These can lead to very unstable deprotonated intermediates that can go off rather energetically through a self-catalytic mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, strong bases in DMF and DMSO are just, please don't.
No
if
go.
You don't have to.
If there's like certain papers, we can also link them in the description too.
Yeah, we could see. Definitely, there's some really good papers out there, especially in OPRD. Things like HOBT, HOT2, HBTU, these coupling agents.
Mm-hmm.
They're benzotriazoles. Again, they're not.
They're used all the time as acylating reagents too. I remember, I use them, and like when I do videos about like total synthesis, I use the benzotriazole as an acylating reagent. But I don't know how dangerous that is. I just I come across.
I mean, HOBT is the N oxide of benzotriazole, so it's all a whole nother level up above that. DMSO itself can be dangerous when you start heating it. If you're running a reaction even without strong base, you start talking about anything over 125 degrees, it can start to decompose, and if it gets to a certain point, it'll just auto catalyze itself and just go off.
Wow. Okay. So what about, because I've actually done I've distilled DMSO to try and dry it. So perhaps I should. I've done like.
That's probably not a good idea, because it's actually worse when it's worse when it's dry. A little bit of water actually helps keep it safe.
Okay. All right.
Actually, Jeff. So before Jeff moved on to Vertex, one of the last things he did is he gave our department a seminar on DMSO, and he has some amazing charts about the water content versus explosivity.
Okay.
It really drove the point home.
I'll have to read that, because sometimes I use DMSO as a solvent, but also we're trying to actually use it as a ligand for palladium. And in these cases, I would love to have, it would be ideal to have dry DMSO. So I've done, calcium hydride and then distilled it under static high vacuum, but perhaps it's not a good idea. I don't know. I've never.
I think Jeff's on my phone right now. No, I'm just kidding.
I get a call. Okay,
Yeah,
well,
those are
I
some
will
things to
not.
really, that's something we should, you know, keep an eye out on, things like
Yeah.
that. I remember there was a paper that came out in JOC last year sometime, maybe.
Hmm.
As soon as I saw the TOC graphic, I opened it up. I'm like, oh my word, did you really? It was like this. There was base, there was DMSO, there was gas being generated,
Oh,
and it was
Jesus.
basically being done in a sealed tube in the microwave.
What the?
And in the paper basically said, we couldn't run this open. We couldn't. There was fires. I'm like, that maybe is a clue. And so Jeff and I actually wrote a letter to the editor of JOC and said, hey, could you you need to put a note in here somehow, maybe a
Yeah.
red box around the TOC graphic,
Right.
that be forewarned that this is not something people should be doing. It was kind of shocking.
Okay.
And there wasn't a single reference in the paper to any kind of safety data.
Mhm.
And some of these, chemistry is always going to be a fine line between reactivity and hazard.
Right.
You think about some of the most reactive things we have; they're so useful. Bewley, T-Bewley. It's just some of these,
Fantastic basis.
yeah. I mean,
But
we, I hate to bring this up as it's a story that people should always know about. The Sanghi incident at UCLA, where the researcher died from burns,
right.
from the T-Bewley fire. At the time, we were actually doing some of my favorite chemistry here ever at Pfizer, closing up this ring, this spirocyclic lactam ring, and we were using T-Bewley to do a deprotonation, metallation of a bromide,
Mhm.
and it was snapping shut on an isocyanate to form this spirolactam.
Mhm.
And we were using T-Bewley, and we were starting to scale up, and that was about when that happened. And
Wow.
where our management immediately was like, we really should be careful with this. Let's not do, let's set a cap on a couple of grams at a time. Okay.
Mhm.
So one of my colleagues was going to syringe out some T-Bewley, and just remember him saying his glove was starting to get hot. He was like, I don't like this,
Yep.
And so we just stopped for a while, and we decided to, instead of scaling down, we were going to scale up. And we ended up basically doing the reaction on a bottle scale. So we used 150 ml bottle of T-Bewley, and whatever scale that was, we used that and just cannulated it dropwise into the
Okay.
reaction,
Yeah.
so that we never actually used a syringe or anything else like that. And
Yeah.
everything
That's
went
very
great.
smart.
And it was it's kind of these things you just gotta, just think about what it is that you're doing. We have a thing here at Pfizer about, just safety in general. What are you doing? How can I get hurt? And what am I going to do about it? How can I avoid that that activity, or that, avoid the hazard? And so
Yep.
let's just, think about what it is that you're doing, and just do a little planning ahead of time, and you can, get away from that.
Yeah. That's really a smart idea, doing a cannula transfer like of larger volumes and like or using up an entire bottle basically, because I mean, especially Turbulent, I mean,
Yeah.
I would start feeling uncomfortable syringing more than 3 milliliters, honestly.
Yeah.
Like anything more than even 2, honestly. 2 milliliters, I'm
Yeah.
like kind of maxing out. There's really no reason to
Yeah,
syringe out more than that, I think.
I mean, I suppose, knowing this reaction, in hindsight, we know that it's almost instantaneous, and you can see the color change when it hits. It I forget if it goes, drops, it's yellow, and then it goes clear.
Mm-hmm.
Drops, if it stays yellow, it's done. So it's almost like I think that's what it was. And we could have done it smaller scale and just cannulated over what we needed, but we're like, you know what, we got plenty of material here. We're just going to do the whole thing and be done with it in one shot. And it worked out. But that was I think that's the thing, is really just to understand the hazards of the things we work on. You can't avoid hazards in a chemistry lab, but being able to understand what they are and prepare yourself for it. Like POCL, the POCl3, phosphorus oxychloride.
Okay, yep.
Is just an amazing reagent. Does a lot of wonderful things, but is one of the worst hazards. Not in the reaction, but on workup.
Right.
You hear things in industry, not so much anymore, but because people have learned how to deal with it. But even waste. If somebody throws out neat POCL in waste, but it's in, there's some acetonitrile that they rinse the bottle with beforehand, and they dump the POCL in there. Maybe like 3 days later, that bottle might react because there's it's autocatalytic it's POCL decomp is autocatalytic in acid and heat, and it releases acid and heat when it decomposes. So it just goes.
It's chlorine gas, right? I mean,
I think so, yeah,
phosphorus?
or HCl for sure.
Yeah, HCl, HCl for sure.
And so, we've developed, and hopefully people do things like this. But in here we've now retired senior chemist that worked here developed this protocol for us to decompose large amounts of POCL. It's basically like dripping into acid, because POCL isn't soluble in water. So you've got to be able, and so if you just dump it into ice water, it actually does nothing. And what will happen is you'll get a pool of POCL at the bottom of a flask covered with ice water, and it'll start reacting on the edge at the interface. And then, like I said, it'll start making acid and heat at the interface. And all of a sudden, that'll spread through the whole thing, and it could easily just go screaming out the top of your flask.
Oh, geez.
If you're trying to work it up. So, one of the ways we've found to do it is to take something like toluene and some 1 molar HCl, and just stir the living daylights out of that. And just get it really going, so it's almost like a foam, and you drip the POCL into that. And so you'll have a lot of it, because you're stirring it so fast, you'll have a lot of interface. And that acid that's in the aqueous is going to help decompose the POCL quickly. So it's done with quickly. You'll get some heat. You can do it in an ice bath if you need to keep it kind of room temperature. It's a great way to work up your reaction, as long as your compound is stable to acid. Right.
This is all great advice. I here in our lab specifically, we've had to work with trichlorophosphine, so PCl3, in order great electrophile to make phosphorus compounds. So having to deal with that waste is it's actually extremely insightful for new students to learn in the presence of an older student, because it really teaches you how to quench hazardous reagents, essentially. So, our marquee ligand, triaminophosphine, in order to make that, you have to start with the diatomental phosphine oxide. In order to make that, you start from PCl3. And PCl3, like POCL, I mean, it's wants to make HCl and make the phosphorus oxygen bonds. So in order to deal with it, we evaporate off. We evaporate off excess PCl3, because it essentially uses a solvent, but we put that into a liquid nitrogen bath. So you condense the PCl3. At that point, we have it, and then now we're able to quench it. We dilute it with a lot of toluene, and then we start dripping in some water, ice cold, like water while it's still cold. So that's kind of how we deal with it. So it's very insightful for a new student to see how to deal with these extremely, hazardous reagents, right? I mean, that makes HCl. So definitely hear that. Broadly speaking, really know about what you're working with and potential intermediates, like you mentioned. And how do you deal with the residual, like hazardous reagents, right? How are you going to deal with that? So,
you just have to have respect for everything that you work with. It's because there's a lot of stuff in here that can do harm.
right.
And just have to be careful with it.
Don't get
be careful.
complacent.
What's that?
Like, don't get complacent, because I feel like sometimes, all chemists are probably guilty of this. Is like you enter a groove where you start taking reactions for granted, and you are going to try a new reaction. Just before running it, just look over the safety of all the reagents. Hopefully, if you're trying to replicate something from literature, hopefully they have a safety concern, right? So, if not, and if something doesn't feel right, then it's probably not right, honestly. So,
I mean, you got to have a plan, for whatever it is, and because almost anything can happen, and it probably has happened before, somewhere, sometime. But no, it's chemistry is incredibly rewarding and everything, but you have to absolutely treat it with respect all the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of the other thing that I think is kind of foreign to new people that start here is, we're like, you need to go home by 6. We don't want you in here. There used to be. I used to live around the corner. I'd come in at night, crank up some tunes, and do some work in the lab. And nobody should be doing that. Don't be here by yourself. In fact, the rule is, if you're not here, if there is nobody in the labs around you, you have to go.
That's a good rule of thumb.
And so you need somebody within shouting distance in case anything goes wrong. Nobody's here. If you need to be here on the weekend, your manager will be here with you. Because occasionally there are deliveries that need to be made, for timely studies and things like that. We hope that never has to fall on a weekend, but maybe every couple of years you find that happening. But there will be people here with you to make sure that you're not in here by yourself. And so go home, go out, have a go get some dinner. Watch TV,
spend time with your family, spend time with your friends.
Go home, say hi to everybody. Yeah,
trust me, the chemistry can wait.
It can always wait, and it's better to have you come in tomorrow than not come in at all.
Right.
So,
great advice.
Yeah. But
moving to some other things, that just talking about more broadly your experiences, because program chair for Division of Organic Chemistry. So I've been to a few seminars which have been extremely insightful and really fun. If you haven't been to one yet, please, follow the Division of Organic Chemistry. Make sure you're following Scott on Twitter, because it's really just a great resource to see some of the best, seeing what's going on in industry, but also some of the best academics. State of the art science, right? Always up to date, is just super insightful, and I've really appreciated the. You've brought on, great guests recently, Kiri Engel, which I, follow because of organometallics, but seeing those stories with the other pharmaceutical companies with the process and med chemists have been extremely insightful for me, because I don't really get that in my own personal academic. So bottom line is, make sure you're following. So we can definitely discuss that, but I also want to discuss, ACS 2024, the events that you were at and you ran, and because it seemed like a lot of fun. So perhaps we could start with Division of Organic Chemistry and how you got to that position, right? Because kind of harping back to what we were saying earlier, it's like, at the end of the day, you got to take those opportunities when they come, and getting yourself involved is never, ever a bad thing. So tell us a little bit about Division of Organic Chemistry.
Absolutely. And, I tell you, looking back, I wish I had done it a lot sooner. I guess I always liked going to the ACS meetings. They were always in really um, neat places. You could see, a huge swath of chemistry. I've gone to like food chemistry, history of chemistry, different inorganic ones, you know, just some amazing variety of talks over the years, just to see what's out there. And now, building a network across divisions has been, just incredible. But yeah, so I started going years ago, and just it's been really enjoyed it a lot. It's a lot different than some of the smaller conferences like a Gordon. But it kind of, my journey kind of actually started directly with back in, I don't know, I'm gonna say maybe 15 years ago, late 2000s, maybe a bit before that. I was looking around, and there was a lot of really good non-PhD chemists doing really good work here at Pfizer. And the ACS has this award, this Technical Achievement Award in Technical Achievement in Organic Chemistry. It's given by the Division of Organic Chemistry, and a couple of people from Pfizer had won it over the years, and I was like, I think we need to do a better job of recognizing some of the people here at Pfizer who are doing that work. And so I got involved here at Pfizer in trying to nominate people. And so we started a committee, or restarted a committee that used to be active doing that. And it was a lot of fun. It was probably the best committee meeting I've ever been in, because at the end of it, you're having fun. You're doing something good at the end of it. That's not just another meeting. It's you're helping somebody in their career and honoring their work. A few years later, I was asked to step down from the committee because they wanted to nominate me, which was a huge honor. And I was given that award by the DOC in 2013, along with a few other Pfizer folks. And there's usually about 10, 12, now a few more that were given it every year. And then the next year, I was asked to be on the committee at the DOC that helps select these awardees at the national level. And so, I was like, that's great. And I just started, reading these resumes of people and saying, I think this, and being part of this. And a couple of years later, they asked me to run the session, be the organizer that year, be the chair of that committee, and just sort of kind of stepping up and just learning about how these things run, and just enjoying being part of this community, and meeting people. Like I said, it goes back to the people that I learned chemistry from, and then sort of just broadening that community out to other things. And I just really enjoyed that bit, and meeting people at the ACS who were doing really good work, good people who were doing good work, and just kind of kept hanging around the ACS. Volunteered at the 2019 NOS as on the committee there. Met even more people. Just really got into the whole organizing conference bit, and not long after that, that's about when they started so Steve Silverman and Carl Hansen started the Virtual Symposium you were talking about. And they were looking for a third, and they asked me to join in during the pandemic, when they were doing a number of them like every other month, because it was, nobody was at work, and it was one way to keep the community going. And so it was, I started joining them and helping out there with that. I tried to, the executive board for the ACS, you can run for member at large for the DOC, sorry. Tried to run for that. I lost a couple times, but I knew I wanted to be involved, and one day they, in what was that, 2021? Yeah, they called up maybe August or so and said, I know you don't want to run anymore, but would you like, the program chair spot is a non-elected position. Would you like to join us and be part of our committee and be program chair elect with Steve Silverman and Emma McLaughlin? And it was one of those times where another sort of complete change in your road. There was a lot of things going on at the time. I was really busy with I was running the parallel chemistry lab group here in our department, doing a lot of chemistry for all the projects across our whole portfolio in my department, and it was fun, but it was something, I don't know, something missing. Really, being in all the projects, I wasn't spending much time doing science, talking about it a lot, sort of directing things, and I just sort of kind of sat back after getting that phone call and saying, what is it that I really want to do? So at the time I was doing this, I had a group of people that I supervised, and this wonderful team of people that I worked with, but I missed the lab. I was doing collaborations, but I wasn't actually actively collaborating, doing the work.
Right.
And then I knew that if I wanted to do the program chair job, I couldn't do my supervisory role as well, because the business, the time constraints of both are just so much, and
the limiting reagent to a lot of things.
Yeah, and I just it took me about some real soul searching, which, funny enough, only took about half an hour. I just was like, you know what? I know exactly what I want to do. Because I guess it was there the whole time. And I just called my boss and my director. Actually, at the time, he was my boss. And I said, I would like to do this other thing. I would like to do this organic chemistry job, the DOC job.
Yeah.
And I would like to get back, and I think I have a proposal here. I would let somebody else have my leadership job here at Pfizer, the lead of this lab. If I could do this job where I could get back in the lab and do chemistry, because that's what I want to do.
Right. Hands-on.
Do my collaborations, my outreach, all these other things, and support that with working with the DOC. And you can see where that all comes together, where there's, I'll know what we're working on inside. I know the problems that we're going to have, the chemistry, not the problems, the problematic chemistry that we would like to be developed through collaborations.
Yes.
And I can make connections for collaborations through the DOC. And it just kind of, that circle just sort of came, my boss was like, I think that's a fantastic idea.
Right.
And so that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years, is sort of, a few weeks in the lab, a few weeks of DOC stuff, a few weeks of collaborations and outreach, and and that combined with being active and stuff on social media, where you're kind of building a community there. The connections just it's become, that's my role now, is sort of being a like I said before, I want to be a node that people can come and talk to and find out where to go next. And it's
cultivating a chemistry community. Right?
Exactly. And it's like right where I want to be. I can contribute in all of these different areas. And whether it's here at Pfizer on the chemistry that we're doing, I tend now to be more in that space where at the end of projects, before they get handed over to process, where we're developing process type chemistry that they can take directly into kilo scale. I really enjoy that space, optimizing reactions and sequences, which is also why I'm interested in the whole process safety area. Right. Because when you start scaling up, these considerations become more prominent.
Right.
And so, I'll get those projects here and there. I'll do, work in the lab, see what chemistry we need to work on. Maybe talk to some academics about collaborations on different types of chemistry like that. And then, a few weeks at a time, like right now, I'm deep in actually planning the spring meeting for the ACS, because I know we just ended the fall meeting, but the spring meeting, the abstracts are due in 3 weeks. It's and so we're talking about what sessions are we going to have? We just got a list of, I don't know if you all have seen this, but the 2025 awardees, we're going to have 10 of them giving sessions in the organic division in San Diego. Just a who's who of fantastic chemists. So I'm really excited about that. And but the planning, there is a lot of planning that goes on. You don't have, we have the last few meetings we've had anywhere from 800 to 1,000 abstracts for posters and talks, and for the DOC alone, let alone the rest of the meeting. And we're starting to do a lot of collaborative programming with other divisions. We've got to put out a shout out to my new buddy Cody Ross Pitts over there at UC Davis doing fluorine chemistry. We're organizing a joint fluorine organic session. It's going to talk a lot about new methods and how are we getting away from PFAS and other regulations that are coming into the industry, things like that. So there's a lot of really neat collaborative things that are going on there, but it's busy. I mean, and not to but wait, there's more. We're soliciting ideas for October, early October. We're going to have to start finalizing our programming for next fall's meeting.
Right.
So it's kind of the cycle that just doesn't end. And but
in a good way, right? I mean,
it's a great way. It's a great way.
Yeah.
The folks at the DOC are some of the most wonderful, hardworking people that I just love to be around them. They just, they're always willing to help. They've got great ideas, and like I said, we meet some of the most amazing people. Just hopping real quick back to working with Teshik. We published a paper a few years ago, and it was highlighted in OPRD items of interest. And
great little journal, by the way.
Great. OPRD is a fantastic journal. Every month, if you want to read what is going on in industry or in chemistry that's useful for industry, the OPRD items of interest is a must read. Yeah. Our paper was highlighted in there, and thank you all for that. That was wonderful. But it's a Yoon and Pfizer. And I'd already started kind of all of the stuff that I've been talking about, but it sort of drove home the point that some companies are monoliths. You don't see inside. You don't know. There's no connection, no personality, not no personality. There's nobody you can just sort of call up or connect with.
Right.
Some other companies do it really well. I mean, like somebody like Oliver Thiel at Amgen is out there, on LinkedIn and other places. LC Campo and Danny Schultz at Merck are they're out there with their podcasts and things like that. They're a face. We really didn't have a face or here at Pfizer, and that wasn't what I wanted. I'm not saying I wanted to be that, but it felt like students needed somebody to be able to contact, professors needed somebody they could contact, and being involved in all these things, it helps a lot. And so it was important for me to help make those connections again, back to being a connector. But yeah, it's been quite a ride. It's keeps me incredibly busy, and that's great. But it's fun to see people enjoying themselves at these meetings. We had back to Cody. He was giving a talk Thursday morning in Denver. Thursday morning, we may have 20 people watching talks combined. There was a standing room only watching that session on Thursday morning in Denver. So we people were having a grand time, and we had a fantastic programming. And I also want to shout out to the folks, not just the DOC folks, but the people out there, the academics, the industry folks, who are the ones who propose and organize a lot of the sessions we have. They're the ones that are keeping on top of what's going on the outside, and they bring fantastic ideas to us so we can pick the best, just wonderful sessions.
Right.
There's one we're starting to have regularly now called Biopharma 101, and it's it's young professionals talking about the transition from grad school to industry, or from large pharma to small pharma, or the other way around, and just sort of the things to look out for, how what that transition looks like, how to prepare yourself. It's a fantastic session for people to go to and meet people, and this Q&As afterwards, and it's really a great session.
Yeah.
So,
well, a couple of things there. I think what's really reassuring, kind of saying what you were talking about earlier, but I think what's really reassuring to a lot of people is that, like, even in your long history of like work experience, you were still doing some soul searching so late on, and just like even you so late, or I shouldn't say late into your career, but so much work experience that you're still soul searching on what you actually want to do. I think that's so reassuring to people that are like, a lot who are just coming out of college, right? Who are going through that phase, but also you also recognize that you might have had too much on your plate, or you were invested in areas that you didn't necessarily not necessarily want to be, or kind of you wanted to reevaluate what you actually wanted to do. And I think it's just reassuring for people to hear, like, I think one of the take home messages is like, take up as much opportunity as you can, right? When opportunities go, take them. Even if you don't like necessarily what you're doing, you're now learning a piece about yourself. You don't like doing this, right? That's a super important piece of information. You took that risk, you learned something about yourself. So I just think that that's super important, right? And, you don't have to have all the answers planned out, but you just have to take those opportunities, right? I think that's kind of one of the messages, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I will have to say that I'm thankful to Pfizer, my department, my management, for letting me do this,
Right.
but also acknowledge that I'm privileged to be able to do it here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sorry, so the other that the privilege is being here, whereas if I was at a smaller company or somewhere else, I don't know if that would be an option available to me, because we do. This place offers me, because it's big, it offers me the space and the support to be able to do that. You're at a small company, you might have 5 or 6 different jobs. I was talking to one chemist who's at a small biotech, and he was, he's running their sample collection, and he's doing all these other things that are not related to, just chemistry.
The chemistry itself, right?
Yeah, but because we have a lot of resources here, I am able to do this work, and so I have to definitely acknowledge that.
But you're using that extra time wisely too.
Yeah,
it's like you're doing other things.
I a couple years ago, I did a thing on Twitter with that this guy Teddy Zartler started, called Young Chemist Networking. It's a hashtag thing, and you can look that up. Young Scientist. I don't remember actually which one it is. Young Scientist Next Networking thing. Basically, I did like this long thread of kind of what we just talked about today, my career, where I started, where I came from. And the very first picture that I put on there, and maybe the second tweet, I think it was, in that thread, was just this picture of this just completely winding mountain road. And I feel like that's a metaphor for my career, because I've literally only had this job here at Pfizer for the last 30 years. I've been in basically the same department, doing almost the exact same thing in various forms. But every couple of years, something changes. So for a while, I was actually running a outsourcing lab at Wuxi in China. I was, before that, I was involved in helping to optimize chemistry for our monomers and templates, which is sort of our code for the pieces we used for library chemistry.
Right.
And sort of, I got to see a lot of the chemistry that other departments were doing. I did a bunch of different roles from lab to lab, or had a lab that was just straight med chem. We did a really great thing. We developed some really I'm looking at one of my compounds up on the board here that I'm not supposed to talk about, but develop some. We did publish about it. I'll say it's on Synjay Chem. You can go look. But the success we had in these labs here, and then sort of jumping around to doing the parallel chemistry and things, and now kind of landing where I am now. I'm still in the same department. I've just done so many different things. It's just it's been a fun ride and keeps it fresh. I think that's the key there.
Right.
And that's I think that's where I get a lot of energy from the students, and the young professors I talk to are really excited about sharing their work and hearing about more and more, and so
that keeps the fire going, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So trying to see where I can incorporate some of that stuff.
Right.
Shout out to Mark Levin, but I'd really love to do some skeletal editing with some of his things. But back to our safety, I have this conversation with him every time. I mean, some of those reagents he uses, we just can't use because the onset temperature for their exotherms is just too low. And so I'd love to be able to do some end deletion, but sorry, dude. Yeah.
Cool transformation.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see all these things and to be able to sort of give back to or emulate the people that helped me early in my career.
Right. Yeah. Well, as we begin to wrap up here, sure. Perhaps we could discuss some things on the horizon, right? Specifically, like through the DOC, ACS, anything that we can be looking forward to. When are we bringing back the symposiums? The last one was in July. Are we going to bring?
So, all right. So, yeah, we're actually starting to plan for. We have one coming up, Virtual Symposium on October 16th. It's always
awesome.
So we've gone to 4 times a year. So it's January, April, July, and October.
Awesome.
And so we're coming up October third Wednesday, October the 16th at 12 noon Eastern. We're going to have Tanning Dow from New York University.
Yep.
And
sure.
Shannon Stahl from the University of Wisconsin.
Oh.
And we have a excellent roster. The speakers are to be decided, but we have a list of people that have agreed that they would like to be part of it. Just have to figure out timing. My buddy Jeff Sperry, want to have him in, talk about what he said he'd be. Setting up some of these industry ones is always a little tough because there's timing that certain companies have to be able to do their disclosures. But we have to respect that. We have Brian Stoltz, who's agreed to be part of that.
That's gonna be awesome.
I have others that I'm blanking on right now. I apologize. We've been in touch with Donna Blackman. She really wants to be in. We have a list of probably 3-4 years worth of people that we would love to have. I was one of my first kind of executive decisions on this one was in this program was to bring in have a PUI session. So a couple years ago we did one of those and done a couple since then, and really would love to continue to include PUI research in this because it's important. It has I have a soft spot for it, and I think it's important because this is where people who go to grad school, this is where they learn to love chemistry. And I think it's important to recognize the efforts people are doing in both research and teaching. So so no, we have a strong program coming up as part of that goes. As soon as hopefully this week I'll hear from the next set of speakers and we'll get the flyers going out and publicity. But that'll be coming out soon.
And if people want to start getting involved now, I mean, people want to start volunteering, getting in touch, where can we go? I mean, I know obviously the Division of Organic Chemistry website's a great website, so.
Yeah, so if there's
ACS.
actually a volunteer portal there if you want to put in some stuff, or we're always looking for things like I place I started was being a presider at at ACS meetings.
Yeah.
And people will will know you from that, and ask you to come back and do some other things.
Yeah, I'm
And we're
literally looking
always
at it right
looking
now.
for
Volunteer activities for ACS meetings, volunteer activities for governance.
yeah,
Plenty of places to get involved, people.
absolutely.
There's no
And
shortage of it.
nope, not at all. And some other things are, if you know some chemistry that you're really interested in, say like macrocyclization, or new ligand development,
Right.
for instance, right? That you're doing. We're always looking for new ideas for symposia. So propose a symposia. Select 5 or 6 of your favorite speakers in that session, in that area, and send it to us and propose it as something that you'd like to organize and see at the next one of the next upcoming meetings. Love to hear from everybody. There's a lot of different ways. I and part of the thing I always encourage people to reach out and say, if you want to have a chat, we can set up a Teams. We'll talk about how it is that you can help,
Yeah.
or how to get involved, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Scott, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. It was awesome to speak with you, getting to know you, a little bit about you, and really look forward to not only the work that comes out of Pfizer and the great work that you guys do there, medicine wise, but also the chemistry you guys do is really awesome. But also just looking forward to ACS meetings and division organic chemistry, all that. So really looking forward to it.
Yeah, we have some really cool things coming up, and I'm hoping we have both here at Pfizer, where we're doing some really amazing research I hope you guys hear about in the next little while. And ACS is it's always been bastion for new, really cool new chemistry, and our collaborations here. I hope you'll be hearing more and more about some of them, the fantastic work that we're doing with some really well-known labs around the country and around the world. And thank you to people like my first collaborations were with Dean Tost and Mike at Berkeley, and Mike Willis at Oxford, doing SO2 chemistry. And it was I'm thankful to both of them for being so supportive and getting me involved in really enjoying that kind of work.
Yeah.
So.
Alrighty. Well, everyone, thank you for listening to another episode. We really appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe and like to get more content like this. We're pushing it through. So, but with that, thank you again, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, everybody.
Alrighty.